The state of affairs is as dangerous as it was in the months before the 9/11 attacks. The world is a very dangerous place.
So, Tim Weiner, you've written a fascinating book about the CIA in modern America and how it's changed. You've spoken to a lot of people. Obviously, it's impeccably sourced and it's a weighty tome. There's lots of on the record interviews, with 6 former directors. How do you go about persuading people from this necessarily secretive world to speak to you, and how candid were they really?
Putting people on the record tends to ensure candor or a higher degree of it, I find. If you let them enjoy the cloak of anonymity, well, they can't be held accountable really for what they say. As to why people talk to me, it's an enduring mystery, really. But I've been at this now for 38 years, and I think if you hang around long enough, people tend to trust you more.
Yeah, indeed. You've earned your spurs in reporting on the CIA. And the subtitle of the book, the mission is the title, and the subtitle is The CIA in the 21st Century. So let's start in 2000. What was the state of the CIA in 2000? And obviously, listeners will now be thinking,
In the months and in really the years before the 9/11 attacks, the CIA was in a terrible state, really. Um, a decade before 9/11, it had lost its great enemy, the Soviet Union, and with it, its mission. How could it be a great intelligence service without a great enemy? People said, well, that's that. Cold War's over, job done. Think I'll go find another line of work. And thousands of people with tens of thousands of years of collective experience walked out the door. The foreign policy of the United States under Bill Clinton was, I could sum it up by saying, we are going to spread democracy by selling sneakers to the Chinese. And there was a sense of game over. That changed in 1998 when Al Qaeda blew up 2 American embassies in East Africa. 2 at once was quite a feat at a distance of 3,000 miles. So it began to dawn on CIA that perhaps counterterrorism would supplant anti-communism as the mission. But in the months before the 9/11 attacks, with the CIA knowing that something terrible was about to happen, although the time and place was a mystery, there was a frantic attempt to gear up. But the President of the United States wasn't listening to what the CIA had to say, nor the Secretary of Defense, nor the National Security Advisor. And, it wasn't enough to sound the alarm. You had to make sure the other person heard it, and they weren't listening.
And after 9/11, you use a very striking phrase, the CIA became, or was forced to become, a lethal paramilitary force. Can we just unpack that a bit? What does that mean? What was the change in approach that 9/11 forced?
Well, the President of the United States ordered them to be the pointed end of the spear on the war on terror. Now, the CIA was not set up to be a lethal paramilitary force. It wasn't set up to run secret prisons or interrogate people with torture as the motivation for them to talk. That is not the mission of the CIA. The mission of the CIA is espionage, spying on people. And for 15 years thereafter, counterterrorism really swamped everything. And that didn't really change until the Russians monkey wrenched the 2016 presidential election, which was a covert action whose success was probably exceeded only by the Trojan horse. And the CIA, the leadership of the clandestine service, that is the spies, collectively decided we have to strike back.
And strike back they did. I mean, what were the defining decisions, the defining operations of that period?
Right. Spring of 2017, there's a new chief of the clandestine service. His name is Tomas Rakusan. His roots are Czech. his hatred of the Russians is bred in the bone. And he called in his top officers who had spent 15 years, roughly, running counterterrorism operations all over the world. And he said to them, look here, the Russians just manipulated our frigging elections. What are we going to do about it? How do we make sure this never happens again? And he told them to take the talents that they had honed, targeting terrorists. And by targeting, I don't mean putting warheads on foreheads. I mean identifying them, learning who they were, how they lived, where they slept, how they moved money around, with the goal of recruiting them. And he said to them, I want you to take those talents and turn it on the Russians, on Russian spies, diplomats, oligarchs. And he didn't care if they'd never lived in Moscow. He didn't care if they didn't speak Russian. And off they went. There was literally a call to arms manifesto. That was its title. And the result 4 years later is that the CIA stole Vladimir Putin's war plans for Ukraine. Penetrating the Kremlin had been one of the highest goals of CIA since 1947 when it was founded. And they did it. And this was quite a feat. And then the director of the CIA, William J. Burns, who had been the most talented diplomat of his generation, said, we have to tell the world. This cannot be our secret. Okay. And they told the world through the president and the secretary of state. And the nations of NATO collectively cocked an eyebrow and said, really? Aren't you the people that told us Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction? Well, they were right, the CIA was. And proven right. By the way, this achievement was not done solo. CIA had help from many, many nations and allied foreign intelligence services, including from some nations you wouldn't count necessarily as American allies. It had a galvanizing effect on NATO. It unified NATO, and that has been a key to the survival of Ukraine, as has CIA covert support for Ukraine for the past decade.
What were the biggest mistakes the CIA made in the sort of 25-year period you're writing about? What have its biggest errors in the 21st century?
A stain on the honor of the CIA and of the United States that will not out. Thinking it could run secret prisons when it had no competence or experience in doing so. Saying that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, a false report that blazed the trail to war in Iraq. And the stench of these things still lingers 2 decades and more later.
We'll come on to Donald Trump in a moment, but almost everything you mentioned there was from the Bush presidency. How much, and obviously there are operational decisions taken by the CIA, but to what extent is it a question of, we often say, dogs come to look like their owners. Is it the sort of CIA fulfilling the brief that Bush gave them, i.e. beat the war on terror with too much brio?
One of the most important things to understand about the CIA is that it is an executor of the foreign policy of the United States. With rare exceptions, it does what the president tells it to do. It was George W. Bush who authorized the secret prisons, who authorized torture, who authorized drone strikes that killed hundreds, if not more, civilians. The CIA has been called a rogue elephant trampling people and nations. Well, when the elephant goes rogue, it's not the elephant's fault. It's the fault of the elephant driver, the mahout. And the mahout is the president of the United States.
So in that respect, or with that in mind, how might a second Trump presidency, we're in its foothills right now, how do you expect that to change the nature of the CIA?
The president of the United States has put a coterie of crackpots and fools in charge of American national security at the Pentagon, at the Directorate of National Intelligence, at the FBI, and at the CIA. The new CIA director, John Ratcliffe, is distinguished by the fact that he has a track record of telling Donald Trump what he wants to hear, what Trump wants to hear. That is not the job description of the director of the Central Intelligence Agency.
Indeed, you might often have to do the opposite and say something really bad is going to happen, or we've messed up on this or that.
And, we learn to our sorrow that ideology is the enemy of intelligence. If you are an ideologue, you don't want or need intelligence. Your mind is made up. You don't want to be confused with facts. And I have to say, I don't want to be a doomsayer, but the state of affairs is as dangerous as it was in the months before the 9/11 attacks. The world is a very dangerous place. Donald Trump has broken alliances all over the world. He has weakened the State Department. He has weakened the CIA and the other agencies that oversee national security. And God forbid, if the United States is struck again by a surprise attack, what do you think Donald Trump would do? Declare martial law? Reopen the secret prisons? Cancel elections? It's a dangerous state of affairs today. You need a CIA that is competent, not one that has been ideologically purged, which is what is happening right now, not one where the director, Trump's director, John Radcliffe, has fired everyone hired in 2023 and 2024 at the behest of Trump and Elon Musk in the name of government efficiency, God help us. And you need a functioning CIA to look out over the horizon, to perceive potential dangers, and to tell the President of the United States what is going on in the world. None of that is happening right now, to my knowledge.
Well, and it's remarkable, they have a man as director who sent all the names of new recruits by insecure emails, so it doesn't necessarily fill you with hope, but we'll see whether they live down to your expectations in the coming years. Tim Weiner, author of The Mission, the CIA in the 21st Century, a fascinating book, and you've well earned your Pulitzer. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.